Hello, it's good to see you. Today we're going to talk about talking. And I know that sounds stupid. Like, why are you going to talk about talking about talking? I think I put one too many in there. And it's because I have noticed, and I'm not picking on anybody, but I have noticed that a lot of people, especially younger people, don't seem to have very good conversational skills. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm certainly not saying everybody. But, and I'm not going to name names, but I have run across some young people in the last, especially in the last month or so. For some reason, I've just had occasions to talk to young people or to try to talk to young people. And it's like they can't carry on a conversation. And it got to thinking about it. And I was talking to somebody about it earlier today. And I thought it might be a fun thing to make a video about. And this, these are things that would be good for anybody to know. If you're not a good conversationalist, it's kind of it's a skill that you can practice. And if you don't do it, it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, you start to lose it. And I think especially in the last year with the pandemic and everything, there's been a lot less face-to-face conversation with people. I'm the same. I mean, I don't talk to people face to face as much as I did before. I mean, I text or I call them or Skype or whatever. But I'm not, it's different from when you're actually together and you're talking to each other. So I thought we would talk about conversations. And, I also wanted an excuse to show you my cardigan. I found this at Goodwill. This is not the coolest thing. It is a genuine Knit Waves cardigan from the 80s. And look, it has this black and white checked pattern. And I matched to it my black and white stretch bracelets that came from one of the Goodwill bags. And this yellow bracelet that also came from one of the Goodwill bags. And this is mine. I bought it. I think I bought this on eBay several years ago. My little yellow plastic beaded necklace. My little earrings that I got at the Hillsville flea market about probably 8 years ago. And but I love this. See, originally I bought it thinking I would put it on eBay because I could get about $30 or $40 for it. But I like it so much, I think I may actually keep it. And it even has little black and white checked plastic buttons. This is just the cutest little thing. I also put my hair over here to the side. I think the last time I did this with my hair was several years ago for a video. It was at least a couple of years ago, maybe more. I don't know. I just had fun with it. I decided to put on my little cardigan and show it to you. Look at all these color blocks. Oh my goodness. And believe it or not, this is a trademarked pattern that Knit Waves owned. It's on the tag on the inside of the cardigan that you cannot copy this pattern. This is a Knit Waves pattern. So that's serious. I've never seen that on the tag of a garment before. That's crazy. So, and you can't see them, but I'm wearing Adidas track pants as well. It has nothing. It doesn't really go with the outfit. Honestly, if I were going out in this, I would probably put on some jeans maybe. I'd probably go with some skinny jeans and a pair of boots or something since it's winter time. That's probably what I'd do. But it's so soft and thick and it's in great shape. Honestly, I think I'm going to keep it because it makes me very happy. It's just so festive. It's fabulous. Now, this is a perfect example of something that you could start a conversation about. And I think that for a lot of people is a problem. I wrote down some notes in Charity's her little notebook. Don't tell her, she'll get mad at me. I think a lot of people worry too much. They overthink conversations and they worry that they don't have anything to talk about. The first thing I would tell you is take a breath. It's okay. You don't need to have an outline, printed out ahead of time of topics to discuss when I talk to this person. You don't have to do that. You can just let the conversation flow naturally. And I just wrote down some little ideas here to help you when you're involved in a conversation with somebody. And this is whether you're talking to them in person or on the phone. But I do wish we had more of that. I really think we need to get back to having more actual conversations with people. Especially, I don't think young people do it as much. You're so used to using a device, you use your phone or whatever to communicate with people. And if you don't have conversations, if you don't listen to conversations and pick up on the ebb and flow of the conversation, the whole process of a conversation, whether you have just two people or more, there's a certain ebb and flow to conversations. If you listen, you'll pick up on it. It's like the crashing waves of the ocean. You just kind of get a feel for the rhythm of the conversation. And every conversation is different, so each one is going to have a different pattern to it. I think the first thing I would say, and this applies to everybody, I am definitely not just picking on young people because I see people my age and older doing this all the time. Put your phone away. Put it away. I want you to focus on the person or the people in front of you. There is nothing more rude in a conversation, in my opinion. You're trying to talk to somebody and they're sitting here like this. Yeah. All right. Take your phone. Put it away. If you're waiting for an important phone call or something, have it close enough by that you can hear it. Put it away. Let the person that you're talking to know they're more important in this moment than that phone. I've noticed, well, one thing I'll tell you, I found that I kind of had an addiction to my phone. I realized that I felt very anxious if I didn't check it frequently. So one thing I've started doing in the last month is I've just started putting my phone elsewhere. I'll leave the ringer on. If it rings, I'll hear it. It's just like if you have a landline, if it rings, I'll hear it. Anything else, I can look at it later. I don't need to constantly check my phone. And since I've been doing that, I've been doing it more and more. I feel so much better. It's improved my mood. It's improved my focus and my attention span to not feel like I have to constantly look at that thing anymore. But definitely, absolutely, if you're involved in a conversation, once you realize, like if you're somewhere and someone comes up and they want to talk to you, unless you're trying to send a message to them that you don't want to talk, which I can see that. But if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, put your phone away. I mean away. I don't mean just like, hold it in your hand down here somewhere. I mean, put it out of reach. Put it over there somewhere. If it rings, you're going to hear it. You don't need to hold on to it. That shows the person that you're speaking to that you are giving them your undivided attention, and that is, it's so. I think it's so important if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody. And if you find you can't put the phone away without feeling very anxious and nervous, that might be a good sign that you are addicted to your phone and you need to work on that. I mean, I know it's hard, but I've started doing that more and more. I mean, let me tell you, I don't know how old you are. Okay, I'm 47. When I was young, and I know this is crazy, but when I was a kid, we had a phone in the house. And when we left, if somebody called, unless you have an answering machine, we'd have no idea they called. And if they left a message, if we had an answering machine, we could call them back. And it worked out just fine. You won't pass away if you put your phone down and go do something else for a little bit without looking at it. I've even gotten to the point now. If I've run to the store and I realize I don't have my phone with me, it's just kind of like, oh well, whatever. It used to really freak me out if I left the house and realized I forgot my phone. I don't care anymore. I mean, if somebody needs to get a hold of me, I'll check it when I get back. You don't have to be constantly available. It's okay to not be available for a little bit, and then you can try doing it longer and longer. But yeah, you put the phone away. If you're talking to somebody, don't check it. Just put it away. Just put it over there somewhere. That's important. I wanted to say that first. I didn't want to forget that. Another thing that's important when you're having a conversation with someone is to speak slowly. I don't mean You have to drag out every word. I mean, but you don't want to get, and I know it's hard if you're telling an exciting story, because I know I talk faster when I'm telling something that I'm really excited about. It's hard, but slow down. And I think sometimes if I'm nervous, I talk faster. Just if you're talking to somebody who makes you nervous, just take a breath. They're just a person. Don't worry about it. It's okay. You're a person too. You're not unworthy of this moment. You can enjoy this moment with this person. You don't have to feel intimidated or scared. Just if pay attention to your breath. Make sure you're not hyperventilating. Pay attention to your words and how fast you're speaking. You might want to consciously slow down a little bit. So yeah, you might need to slow down. Now the next one is eye contact. And I will say that it's anecdotal, but from my experience trying to speak to young people, again, I know it's just my experience, but I've noticed that a lot of younger people have a hard time maintaining eye contact when you speak to them. They're looking at the floor, they're looking anywhere except at you. And they're just all over. They're just like this. I don't know what. I'm not really sure why that is, but I have definitely noticed that in more than a few young people. Like they just can't look at you. They're looking over here. I'm not really sure what that is, but you might, if you feel that you're doing that, you might want to work on trying to maintain eye contact. But there's a fine line between maintaining eye contact and being weird. Tell you this story of mine. Okay, this was several years ago. My regular doctor moved away. In the practice where she was, I called them and they said, well, she's not here anymore. We have this new doctor. We'll call her Dr. Smith. Do you want to see Dr. Smith? I said, I guess that's okay. So I get in there and I've never met this person before. It's the first and last time I ever saw Dr. Smith, I could tell you that. I went in there, and this woman, I swear I thought she was a robot, because I don't think this woman blinked the entire time I was in there. It was so unnerving, and she just stared at me just like this the entire time I was in there, and she's speaking to me, and she's just looking at me, and I don't think she blinked the entire time I was there. I didn't see her blink even one time. It was incredibly unnerving, and I had a really, I did not enjoy that appointment. It also did not help that she was incredibly rude and condescending to me. I mean, she was breathtakingly rude to me. Without going into details, I had a birth defect that dealt with my kidneys and bladder that I had to have surgery for when I was 2, and it left scar tissue on my kidneys, and sometimes I have problems with infections. And she literally looked at me and said, that didn't happen. I've never heard of anything like that. I think you're incorrect. And I was just stunned. I had no idea how to respond. It's totally off subject, but that's another thing about conversations. You let the conversation flow. If it goes off on a tangent, that's okay. Unless one person was speaking and they were trying to tell a story, and then you just hijack the conversation and never let them finish. You have to pay attention to that. I've been guilty of that myself. But this woman, so she was very good at maintaining eye contact, but she did it to the extent that it was very uncomfortable for me. I mean, she wouldn't take her eyes off me. She was just like this the entire time. Except when she was examining me, she was just like this. And it was really creepy. So after my appointment, I went back up to the front desk, and they wanted to schedule my next checkup. And the lady asked me, do you want to make another appointment with Dr. Smith? I said, I will take an appointment with literally anyone but Dr. Smith. Do not ever schedule me with her ever again. And she said, why? What's wrong? I said, that woman doesn't blink. And the receptionist goes, I know, right? That is so weird. So I never saw Dr. Smith again. And she can just F off to the sunset for all I care, that she was awful. Anyway, eye contact, I think, is very important. but you don't want to do it to the extent that you make the other person freak out. Just, you can look away. It's okay, especially I find when I'm telling a story, I'm looking, it's like my brain is looking at something and I'm up here looking at it. I don't know why. It's okay though, because that's natural. But I think if you have a hard time maintaining eye contact with people, that may be something you have to actually practice. I don't know. I've never really had a problem with it, so I don't know. I think one thing that helped me though was that throughout most of my childhood, I spent most of my time around older people, older adults. Really, the only time I ever spent in the presence of kids was when I was in school, and sometimes I'd spend the weekends with my friends or whatever, but for the most part, I was around older adults. And I spent a lot of time listening to their conversations and just picking up on it's always interested me, the flow of conversations in a group of people. It's just interesting to see where it will go, and they would talk to me and I would talk to them, and I was able to develop some conversational skills, I guess, as a kid. And I think these days, honestly, maybe we're just not talking to our kids enough. I know it's hard because a lot of times they're in front of a screen and they don't want to talk to you, because I have two kids. But I have found during the pandemic, since they've been stuck with me now for almost 11 months, and I'm really the only person they have to talk to, we've been talking a lot more. And I'm trying to help them with that so they don't lose their conversational skills, so they can still go out in public and talk to people, and it's okay. But maybe we're not talking to our kids enough. I don't know. I don't really know what it is. I don't recall ever seeing this when I was young. I don't remember ever encountering another young person and thinking, man, that's weird. It's like they don't know how to talk to people. I don't remember that ever being an issue, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, another thing. If you're afraid that you're going to talk to somebody and you're not going to know what to talk about, you can notice details. I'm not talking like you have to look them up and down, but if you notice, like, say, they have an interesting ring on or a pair of earrings that looks cool, you can ask them questions, because one thing I've learned is that people love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about themselves, and if you give them an opportunity to talk about themselves, they're going to love you. They're going to come away from that conversation thinking you're the most awesome person ever. Especially if you notice something interesting, or if they said something, you heard them say something to someone like, oh, I heard you talking about this espresso maker. I've been looking for one, so do you like that one? Or just any little thing that you might be able to spark a conversation about. You could say, oh, your ring is very pretty. Where did you get that? Is it an antique? Or and you can get them to talk about the ring. They might have an interesting story behind it. If it's a couple, you can ask them, how did you two meet? Or, just any, like, if they have an anniversary coming up, you can ask them about that. People loves to talk. They love to talk about themselves. They do, because it's a way to share, and it's just a fun thing for most people to do. Now, some people, it's like pulling teeth to get them to talk at all. They're a little more challenging. With them, you could start out by opening up about yourself a little bit. You could tell them, what you do for a living, or an interesting article you read somewhere, or something to try to draw something out of them. And some people are just very hard to talk to. And that could be for any number of reasons. Maybe they have social anxiety. Maybe they're just really shy. It could be anything, or maybe they just don't feel like talking. I mean, some days I don't feel like talking. But notice details. Just notice little things, and you can ask them questions, or you could show them something interesting of yours. Like if they had an interesting ring, you could say, well, this is a mother of pearl ring, and I found this in a giant bag of Goodwill jewelry. In fact, I found a lot of interesting jewelry that way, and you could talk to them about that. It could be for anything. Let's see. Oh, give unique compliments. And again, if you're noticing things about them, another thing people love are compliments. And it doesn't have to be fake. I mean, if you see Like if they have on a watch and you think it's really cool, there is nothing wrong, and I've done this, telling a total stranger, hey, I love that watch. That is the coolest watch. I've started doing that more because sometimes I'll be in a store and I will see something that I think is really cool. Like, the other day I was in Walmart and this lady had on this cool pair of red boots and I thought they were beautiful. And I had this thought like, oh, her boots are cool. And I was about to walk on by and I thought, why don't you tell her that? She might like to know. And I told her, I said, hey, your boots are really cool. And she just lit up. I mean, it just, oh my gosh. She smiled the most beautiful smile. She said, thank you. And she was still smiling and she walked away. I just said, your boots are awesome. It doesn't cost anything. And you could make somebody's day doing that. Even if you don't get into a conversation about them. It's okay to tell people stuff like that. Like, hey, that's, your hair is beautiful. I love the color of your hair. Or, just anything. People love that. So, yeah, notice, give them unique compliments. Like handwriting. If they have pretty handwriting, you could say, you have beautiful handwriting. Where did you learn to write like that? My goodness. If you ever tried calligraphy, because I think you'd be really good at it. I mean, you could just give them a compliment on anything. If they have a beautiful laugh, you can tell them that your laugh is like music. It just cheers me up to hear it. Any little thing. And that could spark a conversation with somebody. I don't know. Well, I think I kind of already talked about this a little bit. Let them talk. Let them talk, especially if it's somebody, if you're a little shy, you're a little hesitant, a little nervous, whatever. Let them talk. You can ask them an open-ended question. Just let them talk about whatever. Some people just love to talk. And that's one problem that people without conversational skills have, is that sometimes they overcompensate, they overdo it. They will get into a conversation and just basically take it over. If you've ever been in a situation like that, it's very uncomfortable and it gets boring really fast. If you're trying to have a conversation, especially if it's a group and one person just commandeers the entire conversation and they're just basically monologuing at everyone and they just never shut up. I think some people do that out of nervousness, but I also think some people do it because they just don't know any better. I had a situation like that. Oh my goodness. I had several people over. This was about a year ago. It was before COVID was like a huge deal. And this one person I invited over just talked and talked and talked to the point where it was uncomfortable. And we're all kind of looking at each other like, oh my God. So if you're in a conversation like that, where somebody has taken over the entire conversation, you have to make a hard break. And that's what I had to do. And it was hard because with this person, it's like there was no break. It was just, there was no like moment, So I finally just stood up and said, ooh, wee. Would anyone like something to drink? Hey, so-and-so, remember that time we had this iced tea and I tried to completely just shut that person down and start a complete new, reset the conversation. And it worked for a little bit and then the person took back over. But sometimes you just need a hard break in the conversation to kind of break. It's like the person's in a trance. You have to break them out of it. So don't be that person. Try to be aware of how much you're talking and how much the other people are talking. If you've been talking for a really long time, it might be time to kind of wind it down a little bit. Or you can, if you're having trouble winding down, you can ask somebody a question that has something to do with what you're rabbiting on about. But yeah, let other people talk. Because like I said, people do love to talk about themselves. If you give them a chance to talk, you can hear some really fascinating stories from people. Especially, that's why I love to talk to elderly people. Elderly people have the greatest stories. Oh my goodness, just let them talk. Just ask them, can you tell me some experiences. Can you tell me about your childhood? What was life like when you were a kid? Where did you go to school? What was that like? And what kind of things did you enjoy doing when you were a kid? And just let them talk. And just listen. And people love it when you listen to them, and make it obvious that you're listening. You have body language, turn to face them, have kind of an open posture. Don't sit with your legs crossed facing over there. Definitely don't pick up your phone. Like I said, put your phone away and just listen to them. Let them talk. They will love you for that. Yeah, ask questions. That's another thing. And sometimes one question can lead into other questions. Like if you ask someone, tell me about your childhood, and they may say something that sounds interesting, like, oh, I had this bicycle that was great. Well, can you tell me about that? What kind of bicycle was it? Was that common back then? I mean, how much would a bike like that cost? So you can ask them more questions about things that they're talking about. Another thing you can do, and this is something that I need to do more of myself, is read more. My opinion is, well, of course, when you read more, you expand your vocabulary. You're going to have more interesting things to talk about. You're going to learn stuff, and it can help you be a better conversationalist. And even just, listening to audiobooks or things like that. If you don't want to sit down and read a book, you can listen to, audiobooks or whatever. But reading more makes you a more interesting conversationalist, and it will expand your vocabulary. It does wonders for you. And it can also help extend your attention span, I think, especially if you're reading the book. You're focusing for long periods of time on reading. If you're having trouble with your attention span, which I think a lot of people are, especially younger people, it can help extend your attention span. Here's another thing, and this is something I've started doing because I just felt like it. I've started watching really old movies, like silent films from the 20s and 30s. And something interesting I've noticed. I noticed this yesterday. I was watching one yesterday. I've noticed that the plot in these movies moves much more slowly than any movie you're going to see today. I mean, movies today are just clip, 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 clip. And YouTube videos are that way. All these jump cuts, that's to cater to people with short attention spans. Watching old movies, and there are tons of them on YouTube. You can find tons of old movies on here. Just watch old movies. The way they dress is awesome too. I love the clothes. It's so cool. The one I watched yesterday, I think it was called A Diary of a Young Girl. I think that was it. It was really interesting. It's a silent film, and it was made in Germany, so you have to read the English subtitles under the cards. But I noticed how slowly the plot moves. It was very interesting because it's so different from movies today. I think over time it can help you slow down a little bit, because you have to follow the plot. You have to kind of slow down and watch it. I'll put a link to it if you want to see it. But it was made in Germany, and it has English subtitles. It was pretty interesting, but it was very slow paced compared to anything you're going to see today. And practice. You can practice your conversation skills, and I think it's kind of like a muscle. It's something that if you don't use it, you will lose it. And I've noticed that. I know someone in particular, and I'm not naming names again, but this person has kept themselves very isolated during this pandemic. This person is very concerned, so they don't really go anywhere unless they have to. And they've cut off a lot of communication with people. And when I go and try to have a conversation with this person, I can't get a word in edgewise. This person just talks the entire time, and I can't get a word in, and they never ask how I'm doing or how anything's going. That's another good thing to do, and I notice a lot of people don't do that. Just ask the person, how are you doing? How's your mom? How's your dad? How are the kids? You can ask just open-ended questions like that. If they have kids who are in school, you can ask them how they're doing with that. Just open-ended questions like that. But it's a skill that you can lose, but it's also a skill that you can improve. And I try to improve. My problem, honestly, most of the time, is that I don't talk enough. I've always been the type to just kind of stand back and just listen. But, you want to contribute. If you have something to say, it's okay to speak up and say it. After a while, if you don't speak the way I feel, if I don't speak for a while, when I go to speak, it's like my voice sounds weird because it's not been a part of this conversation. So for a moment, it feels really weird to say anything. But go ahead and do it, especially if they're talking about something that you have an interesting story about, or you can really contribute something interesting and cool to the conversation. Definitely do it. Just jump in there. Just jump. You may have to jump in there. You may just have to go for it. But do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. I got a lot better about it when I was in college 1,000 years ago, because a lot of my classes were discussion classes. They were small, and you had a lot of open discussion, and you had to speak up. It was part of your grade. If you didn't, if you didn't, it would hurt your grade. So I learned to speak up, and actually, for the first time in my life, I would actually volunteer to say something, which I never did before. I was always so quiet all through school until I got to college, and then I learned to start. If I had something to say, I would say it, which for me was a huge step because I was never like that before. I always felt like nobody wants to hear what I have to say. I mean, that's just how I felt. But then I realized, no, everybody else here gets to speak, and I have something to say too, and I'm going to say it. I'm just going to put it out there and see where the conversation goes. And it's the more you do it, the easier it gets. Oh, another thing I see a lot of people doing, especially, well, not necessarily especially younger people, don't just sit. I know you've experienced this if you've had conversations with people. You can tell, okay, you're talking, and you can tell they're just waiting for you to stop talking. They're not really listening to you. They're just waiting for you to stop speaking so they can start talking again. Try not to do that. I know it's hard. If you're excited about something, you want to just jump in there, but calm down. This is another time. Just take a breath. Just if you feel yourself getting riled up or overly excited, just take a breath. Just and listen to the person. You will get your chance. There will be time. There will be time. Just let them talk and respond to them. You can come back to whatever you wanted to say in a minute. Just let them talk. And if there's something you want to say about that, then say it. Don't trample all over whatever they're trying to say because you want to butt in and say something. And you're sitting there on the edge of your seat waiting for them to shut up so you can talk. And again, I know that's hard sometimes, but it's a bad habit. And I know people who do that chronically, like they can't wait for you to shut up so they can say something. It's really annoying, and that person's going to come away thinking they didn't care to hear anything I had to say. I don't want to talk to them anymore. And they may go out of their way to just avoid you in the future. I mean, I've done that with people. Like people I've worked with in the past, if they were like that frequently, I was not in any hurry to talk to them again if they were just going to run all over me and not let me say anything, or they're not going to listen to what I'm saying. They just want to ramble about their own thing and not even listen to me. I'm not going to be in a hurry to speak to them again in the future. And here's another thing. I know it sounds very trite, but I think it's true. This is the last thing. Be interested, and you will be interesting. If you show that you have real interest in what the other person or the other people are talking about, and you offer insights and your own anecdotes, your own thoughts on that topic, they will come away from that conversation going, God, that person is really cool. They're fascinating. They're so interesting because you showed interest in what they were talking about. And it's obvious when somebody is really interested in you. They're looking at you. You can tell they're listening. They're not off looking over here somewhere, playing with their phone. You can tell when somebody's interested. So, just put yourself in the moment. If you don't really want to talk to this person, but you're there, just go with it. You may learn something really cool from this person. You never know. Like if you were to sit down and talk to me today, I would tell you that I watched the most interesting documentary today on the history of screws. not the history of screwing, the history of screws, metal screws. It's fascinating. I learned some cool stuff about the history of screws. And I can tell you about that if you were interested. I know it sounds boring. It's actually really interesting. So you might learn something. You might think this person is a total bore, but if you talk to them a little bit, you might find they're not. So if you're in the moment and you're having a conversation with somebody, just be in the moment. Don't sit there making a grocery list. Don't sit here thinking, what am I going to eat tonight? What do I have to do tomorrow? Because I've caught myself doing that sometimes, especially if a person drones on for a while. And I have to remind myself, be in the moment, be in the room. You need to listen to this person. So those were just some random thoughts that I wrote down earlier, and I felt like talking about. I think you will find, though, if you give conversations a chance. Now I know it's not something that people do a lot anymore, which I think is a shame. I love conversations. Now I am not one for big groups of people. I don't mind it for a while, but then I'm ready to go. Intimate conversations, one-on-one, or just 3 or 4 people, I love them. I would do that for hours with interesting people. And people are interesting no matter where you find them. I mean, no matter who you meet, I guarantee you there is at least one fascinating thing about them that you don't know, and you may find it out by talking to them and really listening to them and letting them speak, and then offering your own thoughts about whatever the conversation's about. So give it a chance and try to put the phone away. And I would offer that advice to anyone, whether you're trying to have a conversation or not. Put the phone down, look around at the world, go take a walk, do something else. I've started doing more of that in the last month, and I guess really since about Christmas time, I decided, I need to quit spending all my time inside, and I'm just trying to do different things, and it has changed my whole mood. It's helped me a lot. So I highly recommend that. And having conversations with people, I highly recommend that. Any chance you get to talk to somebody, I would definitely take it. So that is it for this little video. It's probably not so little anymore. I don't know. It's turned out to be longer than I thought it would be. That's what she said. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you have a great day, and I will see you again soon.